March 2011. A magnitude 9 earthquake tears apart northeastern Japan. 30,000 people are dead or missing. The government freezes. Aid organizations scramble. Roads are gone. Power is out. But within 48 hours, before a single government truck reaches the coast, convoys of unmarked vehicles arrive in the disaster zone. They carry rice, water, blankets, and diapers. The men unloading them have full-sleeve tattoos and missing fingertips. The Yakuza are here first. The newspapers will praise them. The public will thank them. And while the country watches the disaster relief, no one is watching what's happening in Tokyo. Because at that exact moment, with every investigator's eye pointed north, a real estate firm linked to Japan's largest crime syndicate closes on its 14th luxury tower purchase in 18 months. The disaster wasn't their operation, but the distraction was perfect. This is the story of how the Yakuza stopped being a crime organization and became a real estate empire. How they turned $19 billion in criminal cash into gleaming skyscrapers that house law firms, hedge funds, and rooftop restaurants. And why the Tokyo skyline you see in photographs may be the most elegant money laundering operation in human history. December 1945. Japan has been bombed into rubble. The economy doesn't exist. The government has surrendered. American occupation forces control the country, but they don't control the streets. The streets belong to the black markets. And the black markets belong to two kinds of men: the takiya, traveling street merchants who sell goods from stalls, and the bakuto, gamblers who run dice games in alleys and abandoned warehouses. These aren't criminal masterminds. They're hungry men filling a vacuum. They organize because organization means protection. They build hierarchies because someone has to make decisions. By 1950, these groups have names. By 1960, they have offices. By 1970, they are publicly identified organizations with registered members, known leadership, and offices in major cities that operate almost like corporations. This is the first thing most people get wrong about the Yakuza. They never hid. At their peak in the 1960s, the three dominant groups had a combined membership of over 180,000 people. They published newsletters. They held public funerals. Their bosses gave interviews to newspapers. They operated in the open because they had a relationship with Japanese society that no Western criminal organization has ever achieved. They were tolerated, sometimes actively useful. In the 1950s, when communist labor unions threatened to shut down the ports, the government needed a counterforce. Yakuza members were deployed to break strikes and intimidate organizers. Not secretly, not deniably. Both sides understood the arrangement. The politicians knew, the police knew, everyone knew. What this relationship created was something that would matter enormously 40 years later. It created legitimacy adjacent to crime. Not legitimate, criminal, but operating close enough to legitimate society that when the moment came to cross over, they knew exactly how it was done. But who gave them the moment to cross over? And what economic disaster handed the Yakuza more money than they'd ever seen in their lives?
You know you're dealing with the Yakuza, right?
Japan's economy is on fire. The Plaza Accord forces the yen to appreciate. Cheap credit floods the market. Stocks climb. Land prices climb faster. By 1989, the land under the Imperial Palace in central Tokyo is valued at more than all of California. Everyone is getting rich, and no one is asking where the money is coming from. Into this environment walks a specific kind of Yakuza operator called a jigaeya, land shark in English. The jigaeya's job is simple. A developer wants to build on a particular block, but one tenant won't sell. Maybe an old woman who's lived there for 50 years. The developer can't legally force the tenant out, but he needs the land. So he hires a jigaeya. The jigaeya visits the holdout. He doesn't always threaten. Sometimes he just talks. He returned a second time, a third time. Sometimes he moves men into the building next door and makes the holdout's daily life uncomfortable in ways that are hard to document. The holdout sells, the developer builds. The jigaeya receives a consulting fee, paid through a legitimate-looking invoice from a legitimate-looking company. The cash is now in the system. By the late 1980s, the Yakuza have embedded themselves so deeply into Tokyo's construction boom that investigators estimate they're touching nearly 30% of all land transactions in certain districts. They aren't just taking money from the economy, they're generating it. And then, in 1991, the bubble bursts. Land prices fall 70%. The stock market crashes. Banks collapse. A generation of middle-class Japanese watches their savings evaporate. The Yakuza should have suffered too. They didn't. Because while every bank in Japan was suddenly drowning in bad loans, the Yakuza were holding something banks desperately needed: cash. Actual liquid cash. Cash that hadn't been parked in speculative deals or leveraged 30 times over. While legitimate Japan collapsed, criminal Japan was solvent. And solvent men in a bankrupt country can buy anything. But how do you turn gambling money into a glass tower in Minatoku without anyone asking questions? Here's the part that no one explains clearly. Money laundering isn't one thing. It's three things in sequence. The first stage is placement, getting criminal cash into the financial system. This is the hardest part because cash is suspicious. The second stage is layering, moving the money through enough transactions that its origin becomes invisible. Shell company pays invoice to holding company. Holding company distributes to subsidiary. By transaction 7 or 8, there is no trail back to step 1. The third stage is integration. The money comes out looking clean. It's now rental income. It's now capital gains. It appears on balance sheets. It can be spent in full daylight. Most criminal organizations are good at placement. Some are good at layering. The Yakuza in the 1990s became exceptional at integration. And the tool they used was something the crash had made cheap: Tokyo real estate. When you buy a building in Tokyo, you don't buy it as an individual. You buy it through a company owned by another company, capitalized by an investment vehicle registered in Singapore or the Cayman Islands. The building exists. It's real. It pays real taxes. But proving where the original capital came from requires an investigator to navigate the laws of 4 separate countries and trace transactions designed specifically to resist tracing. In practice, this is nearly impossible. The building just sits there, glass and steel and marble, clean. This is what investigators call the glass tower problem. You can see it, you can point at it, you can say that building has criminal origins, but seeing is not proving. This is where the answer gets uncomfortable. The offshore vehicles, the shell companies, these tools were not invented by criminal organizations. They were invented for tax planning. The same structure that moves Yakuza gambling proceeds into a Tokyo tower is the same structure a multinational corporation uses to minimize its tax exposure. These structures are legal. They were designed by lawyers, approved by governments, and are used every day by the most respected financial institutions in the world. The Yakuza didn't corrupt the system. They used the system that was already built for secrecy. And in the crash years, they found the one thing they needed to make it work: talent. When the banks collapsed, the careers of thousands of skilled financial professionals vanished. Men who understood derivatives, structured products, and offshore vehicles. Some of them found new clients. Not all, not even most, but enough. The Yakuza didn't need corrupt professionals to betray everything they stood for. They just needed professionals who needed work badly enough to not ask every question they might otherwise have asked. One meeting, one structuring consultation, one time. After that, the structure operates on its own. The building is there. The company is registered. The machine just runs. But 1992 changed everything. The Japanese government passed a law specifically targeting Yakuza operations. Were they finally stopped? Or did something more interesting happen? March 1st, 1992, Japan's Organized Crime Countermeasures Law takes effect. For the first time, the government officially defines what a Yakuza organization is. On paper, this is the beginning of the end. In practice, it creates something no one anticipated. It creates a boundary. Before 1992, the Yakuza existed in a gray zone, tolerated, useful. After 1992, there is now a formal line. On one side, designated criminals under surveillance, known. On the other side, everyone else. Smart criminal organizations look at that line and they don't try to erase it. They exploit it. The response is what investigators later call the shedding. Senior Yakuza members formally resign from their organizations. On paper, they are now civilians. The restrictions no longer apply, but the relationships don't resign. The networks don't resign. The money doesn't resign. These former members, the Jun Boryokjan, maintain every operational connection to the organizations they nominally left, but now they can open bank accounts, they can sign contracts, they can be listed as directors of holding companies. The 1992 law, designed to cut the Yakuza off, had instead produced a generation of operators that looked, on paper, exactly like legitimate businessmen. By 2011, when the earthquake hits and the investigations look north, these operators have had nearly 20 years to build structures that bear no visible criminal fingerprints. The towers keep going up, and somewhere in the lobby of one of them, a concierge in a pressed uniform greets tenants who are senior partners at law firms, executives at tech companies, visiting foreign investors. None of them know. None of them need to know. The building doesn't remember where it came from. But there's a second crisis coming, one that even the most sophisticated structures can't fully solve. And it starts not with police or prosecutors. It starts with the neighbors.
2012. International pressure on financial secrecy is reaching a breaking point. The Treasury, the OECD, they're all targeting the offshore structures used to hide criminal money. Singapore, Hong Kong, the Cayman Islands, they are all facing demands for transparency. For the Yakuza's real estate empire, this creates a specific problem. The layering depends on opacity. If those jurisdictions start sharing data, the chain becomes readable. The response? It's not to dismantle the structures, it's to accelerate the integration. Buildings held for 15 years, long enough to generate clean rental histories, are sold. Sold to whom? To institutional investors, pension funds, real estate trusts, legitimate entities with no criminal connections. Everything looks clean because by the time it reaches them, it is clean. 15 years of legitimate operations have scrubbed the origin. The criminal money exits. It becomes equity in a pension fund. It becomes returns for retail investors. It becomes perfectly clean capital that has passed through so many legitimate hands that its origin is a closed chapter. The building is still there. The marble lobby is still there. But the criminal money is gone, and a new cycle begins somewhere else. This is the part of the story that nobody in Tokyo talks about. The single greatest threat to the Yakuza's empire has never been investigators or new laws. It's been insiders. In 2008, a senior financial advisor is arrested. He talks for 11 days. He identifies 23 properties. He traces ownership through 4 countries. He names the lawyers and the accountants who structured the deals. The prosecutions are significant, but incomplete. The organizations absorb the loss, restructure, and continue. In 2015, a building manager in Roppongi notices that certain floors he's never been able to access, are being used for regular meetings. Men he doesn't recognize, cars without plates. He reports it. Investigators watch the building for 4 months. What they find isn't a crime scene, it's a boardroom. Men in expensive suits, discussing investment decisions. No weapons, no drugs, just businessmen in a building having meetings. The investigation closes. The building remains. The Yakuza didn't stop being organized crime. They stopped looking like it. April 2023, the Japanese government announces new disclosure requirements. This is described as a breakthrough. It is also privately described as arriving 30 years too late, because the buildings are already built. The transactions are complete. The washing has already happened. Every time a crackdown happened, 1992, 2011, 2023, the same sequence played out. The regulations close a door, and the criminal infrastructure accelerates to get through that door before it closes. Not because the Yakuza are uniquely brilliant, because the financial architecture that makes this possible wasn't built for them. It was built for everyone. The same tools that move Yakuza gambling money are the tools that help a billionaire minimize his taxes. The system works for everyone who can afford to use it, and the Yakuza can afford it.
There's a building in Minato Ward. If you walk past it, you won't think about any of this. It's glass, it's modern, it reflects the sky. Somewhere in this skyline, there is a unit. That unit was purchased with money that started in a gambling operation in 1987. That money moved through 11 transactions and 3 jurisdictions. The money is in the walls, and the walls are clean. The Yakuza started as men filling a vacuum in a destroyed country. At each step, the transformation happened not because the men changed, because the system was ready to receive them. Violence is temporary. Buildings are permanent. You can outlast a prosecution. You can outlast a crackdown. You can outlast the cop who's been watching you for 10 years. You cannot outlast a deed. A deed survives everything. It doesn't testify, it doesn't develop a conscience. It just sits in a registry in a city that will outlast everyone who remembers what it means. That is why, looking up at 40 floors of reflective glass, you are looking at the most patient, most elegant, most invisible criminal operation ever constructed. Not because of the men who built it, but because of the system that let them.